Welcome back, everybody. This is the Prepared Mindset Podcast. I am your host, Austin. And guys, we have so much to talk about, as we are heading into Memorial Day weekend 2023. At least here in Michigan, beautiful weather, a lot to be thankful for. A lot of stuff going on. The unconstitutional ATF brace rule, that deadline is rapidly approaching at the end of the month. However, there's some breaking news from a lot of sources. I know at least one court blocked the rule for some specific plaintiffs, I believe is what I read. So then that's obviously triggering hope that it can be leveraged in other cases from places like, the Gun Policy Coalition, things like that, to leverage that decision. And then also there's a lot of congressional hearings going on right now that are really putting the heat on the ATF and Director Dettelbach and things like that. So obviously, if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably pretty pro firearm. And this is, honestly, guys, if whether you have an AR pistol or not, or you think that pistol braces are silly or not, you have to see the value behind this. You have to understand that these are the kinds of decisions and precedents that we need to start winning these to start reclaiming the ground, so to speak, right, in this war, right? We can call it a war, in this war for our gun rights. We've been slowly giving away our gun rights for the past almost 80 years. When you look at it over time, things like the NFA that, unconstitutionally classify short barrel weapons as items that need to be registered with the government, and they're more dangerous. And these braces get used and they make them more deadly. We've seen video clips of there's elected leaders that turn braces into bump. They say braces turn a firearm fully auto. They act like a bump stock, and it's not true, right? So this is the opportunity. While this is out in the media, it's getting eyes, it's getting attention, and play the game the way that the game is played. Get those viral videos out there, share them. Talk about these things. Look how ridiculous this person looks, not being able to define an assault weapon, not being able to define, why a brace is more dangerous, not being able to cite more than maybe one or two instances, maybe three in the last several years here, where a braced firearm was used in any kind of, mass casualty incident and things like that. And aside from, the very base understanding that, firearms really aren't the problem, but lots of stuff going on. Super, super great, long weekend, Memorial Day. I know there's a lot of emotion and things that are tied to that. I hope everybody takes the opportunity to observe the holiday for what it means and what it truly is. Get outside, have some drinks, barbecue, right? Almost every vet I've ever talked to wishes all the same. It's a celebration of a lot of things and remembrance, I should say, of a lot of other things. So hopefully everybody takes advantage of the weekend and is able to pull some joy out of it. But at any rate, this week joined by an awesome guest, somebody that I think a lot of you, if you're plugged in on social media, Matt Pranka, X-Ray Alpha, as he is known on Instagram. He does what he calls his Redneck podcasts. Great dude, lots of information to share. Works and talks to a lot of guys, or works with and talks to, I should say, a lot of people in the industry space. So he has a lot to say, a lot to share, and he does it all over. He's one of these unique instructors, I'll say, that he actually goes out of his way to have a very pronounced and definitive footprint on social media. I know a lot of us hate it. I know it can get to be a lot. I know a lot of people don't care for the social media piece. They just want to stick to teaching, and I get that. But that's one of the things, right, that makes Matt so unique and stand out. So very happy to be able to get some time on Matt's calendar and bring him on the pod here to have a conversation with me. Before I can get us over to that discussion, though, as always, we're sponsored here. We work with some really, really cool companies, and I'm going to tell you guys about them. First is Midwest Gunworks. Guys, Midwest Gunworks has everything you need. Head on over to MidwestGunworks.com to pick up any AR parts you need to finish a build. Maybe you're going to upgrade that blaster that you started building a couple years ago when you just bought it to make sure you had it. You want to swap out a barrel, new bolt carrier group, stocks or furniture, grips, whatever you need. Magazines, lights, optics. They have everything. You guys can use discount code Prepared Mindset, all one word, to save 5% off your order. You can even pick up a sling. You need to have a sling, right? It's the holster of your rifle. They carry Edgar Sherman design slings, which are some top offerings in the market today. Great options. Guys, Midwest Gunworks has been in business since 97. They're not going to steer you wrong. If they say they got it in stock, they got it in stock. It's going to be shipped out to you. You're going to have it in hands. Can have a good time. Parts, full firearms, whatever you need, MidwestGunworks.com. Also, a big thank you to our friends Garrett, Jonah, and Pierce over at 100 Concepts. Guys, you haven't been following what 100 Concepts has been doing in the last, 8 months or so. You are really missing the train. Their scope caps and their light caps really took off. A lot of people really like the idea. They like the simple concept. They like that they're field repairable when something should go wrong. Their company motto is do good, be dangerous, live free, and they are on a mission to bring great solutions to all of you. Just recently announced that they are being carried, or their products rather, are being carried at Big Tex Ordnance and at T-Rex Arms, which is huge because those are some pretty gigantic names out in our industry. These dudes are doing the good work, you guys. Good quality products. Head on over to 100concepts.com. Again, you can pick up their scope caps, their light caps, some pack and helmet scrim, their new hex caps that they dropped a couple weeks ago that everyone is in love with. 100concepts.com. Thank you as well to LARP Labs. Guys, painting your rifle is part of a good camouflage plan. It's on the list of things that I really need to get done when I have some friends hang out with me, help me, show me how to do it the right way. But painting your optics, your lights, your lasers, it gets dicey. Companies don't like to honor warranties when you do that stuff. It sucks, but we pay a lot of money for these things. That's where LARP Labs comes in. Head on over to larplabs.com and check out the gigantic catalog of computer-cut vinyl wraps that they have for your optics, your flashlights, your weapon lights, your lasers, even your PVS 14s. This is 3M ultra durable vinyl wrap that's used on competitive rock crawlers. It's rated for outdoor usage. Has a lifespan of like 3 years, guys. It's incredible. John and his team did an outstanding job, and they even set you guys up with discount code Prepared Mindset to save you 10% off when you head to larplabs.com to pick up a wrap for your EOTech, Aimpoint, your HoloSun, your Vortex, your SIG optic, whatever you guys need. Let John take care of you. larplabs.com. Again, discount code is Prepared Mindset for 10% off. And as always, have to say thank you to Active Carry. Guys, medical is a huge part of everyday carry. It's a huge part of being well prepared, and it should be a part of your kit when you leave the house, when you're out operating, LARPing, whatever you're going to do. If you got a firearm, you should be carrying medical. Head to activecarrytech.com. You can pick up components to round out the kit you have. Maybe you don't have a kit, and this is the time you need to grab one. You can get one of their Blazer IFAKs, one of their Bolt kits, their Duty Tactical V2 kit. Tons of options, and they set you guys up with discount code PMP10 for 10% off. If you need something a little bit more robust or a little bit different than an IFAK, they have canine kits. If you work in law enforcement, run a canine, get a kit to take care of your four-legged friend. I know a lot of agencies don't have the funding for very robust medical for our canine companions. Head to activecarrytech.com. Again, discount code PMP10. Grab a canine kit. Grab one of their BORTEC trauma kits that is designed for those people that are down there protecting the border. All kinds of good options, a custom kit builder tool, amazing company giving you guys options on American-made medical components. Don't be caught off guard when tragedy strikes. Head over to activecarrytech.com. All right, guys. So, like I said earlier, my guest this week is Matt Pranka of X-Ray Alpha, and you know what? There's nothing else to say. I'm going to shut up now and get on over to my talk with Matt. Here we go. Matt, welcome to the podcast, man. Thanks for making the time to join me.
Oh, my pleasure, man. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Dude, absolutely. I think with what you do with your like Instagram live videos, and I know that's also shared over onto YouTube. I know a lot of people are very familiar with what you do and the information that you try to put out there and help people with. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity to sit down and kind of pick your brain on some of this stuff. Because there's a ton out there, right? I think the training space is large, to say the least. Some good.
I agree. It is. It's definitely flooded, with a lot of different ideas, like anything else. Some good, some bad, different personalities, also some good, some bad, from my viewpoint. But yeah, you see it. You can sort of see it growing kind of month by month.
It does feel like, you know, and we were kind of talking about this offline a little bit. Like you don't have to have like a super stacked like resume, right, to be a good teacher, right? But I do feel like we end up seeing some people that just go, I like shooting, so I'm going to start a training company and I'm going to put out a bunch of information. And if people
You
don't know, a lot of people don't know any better.
and that's it. You do see a lot of that. I think you're kind of in the training space. You're sort of fighting three things, right? You've got experience, which I think it matters to a point. It's not the only thing, but then you also have a currency standpoint, like how current are you with what you're
Mm-hmm.
doing, and then there's an enthusiasm standpoint. And I think if you have too much of any one of those, that's where problems start,
No,
right? You
that's a
can
good
have
way to put that. Yeah.
guys that aren't in current, guys that aren't very current. They could have a lot of experience, but their enthusiasm is through the roof, and that information may or not be good. It's not that it's bad for everybody. I do think different people need different things at different times as they go out through like their training journey, especially when it comes to shooting. But I also believe that there are some things that you're better off learning from the get-go, so you don't have to reteach yourself something else or relearn something else, 5, 6, 7 years down the road.
Yeah,
But
there's definitely value in learning how to walk before you run. Um, and I think a lot of people find that you can get into some of those concepts, right? You can run before you know how to walk. You can make it work. But to your point, right, not having a good foundation, it catches up with all of us at some point. You can't get by on just good looks alone forever.
yeah, no, I agree with that. And everybody, well, not everybody, a lot of people do that. They put the cart before the horse with regards to training, or they get a little bit of currency, the enthusiasm's up, but they don't have kind of foundations that are developed, and they really quickly want to get into some other facet of training, whether it's the a tactics side or something like that, because they're more interested in that. And then also, I think a lot of people have to agree or at least recognize that that stuff is much easier to train than to build the foundation.
Yeah, I think, well, it, it's it's easier to train that stuff, I think, because it's easier to maybe not easier to train, it's easier to sell that, I think, because it looks cool and guys get excited about it. And, whether it's no matter what it is in life, I feel like the fundamental stuff is almost never it's never the sexy thing. No one ever gets like super hyped about, working on just a draw stroke or a grip. Like guys just want to go fast and put rounds down range and all the stuff they see on the internet. I get it, but then it catches up. I've personally gone through it. I've had to fix my grip 2 or 3 different times in the past 2 or 3 years when I realized, okay, well, I thought this was going to help me, but it didn't. Or I thought I was going to cut a corner here and it's not working, and you just eventually have to just put in the time. You have to fix it. You have to get to somebody that can help you, that can point it out, who can look at what you're doing and go, this is what's wrong. And fundamentally address that issue so that you can get back to doing those things that everyone wants to do, the fun stuff. Right.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people are looking for that. One, they latch on to certain people or personalities. Hey, this is going to help me, almost in absence of looking at what the end product is. We talked about this before, where a lot of guys will say, being a good shooter and being a good instructor are different. And I do think that on the instructor side, if you're looking at somebody, hey, I'm going to train you or convey ideas and thoughts and concepts, which is what I do, that are based off my journey of shooting. So if you don't like where my end state is, right? If I was just kind of a marginal shooter, those thoughts, ideas, and concepts seem like they're less effective than somebody else that may have gotten to a much higher level. And even though I think you can get to a very high level and guys have don't have the ability to convey those ideas. Hey, this is how I did this, or this is what I'm doing. They just know it works for them, and however they conceptualize it in their own mind, and they're not good at talking about those ideas with other people, or at least teaching other people those ideas or their way of doing it. But I do think you can't, when you see guys that are the quote unquote the experts, and you see like a very like mid-level range of performance, and then the answer in the training industry, well, I'll just apply umbrellas over it. Well, this is tactical, this is gunfighting, this is what I'm focused on. Where it's like,
Yeah.
okay, why don't you focus on high performance shooting rather than like, okay, this is just what, and I think instructors don't know, hey, this is all they know. And it's a very telling look into where your experience lies.
And I think you nailed quite a bit with that. Like that, I think for a long time people looked at performance shooting as like that's competitive. That's the competitive side. I don't need to worry about that because I'm on the and I wish there was a better name for it because I cringe every time I call anything tactical. But like, oh, I'm on the tactical side, so speed isn't always what's most
Yeah.
important for me. And I think we're finally seeing that go away, and
Well,
that
I
idea
think
go away.
I think guys that say that, one, they don't have any speed. There's no reservoir there for them to dig into, especially if you have to introduce control into it. And I can only talk from my experience, but the one reoccurring theme from every single engagement I've been in is that it's very, very fast. That's the one they've all had in common. And I think if you look at, body cam footage from the law enforcement side, some helmet cam footages, those situations unfold pretty quickly.
Hmm.
Um, and then the shooting, like kind of the performance delivery of the hard skill, whatever it is with a rifle or a pistol, that all happens relatively fast.
Oh
Now,
yeah.
and I think if you were to look at it just for the sake of argument, you look at 100 engagements and the shooting, each law enforcement guy was shooting, let's say at 3/10. That's 3/10 is the splits. That's how fast he's pulling the trigger for every shot. So, okay, that's what the real life performance based that situation requires. And you could even say that's required across this large swath of situations. That can't ever be the goal of where you train, right? You're not gonna, oh, I'm at 3-0 splits on the range when everything's comfortable and I'm in my own little safe haven and I feel good, it's sunny. That's not where your performance needs to lie, because that 3-0 on those conditions during game day starts to be less and less, right? We've all heard that
Yeah.
before. The idea that, hey, you're never going to rise to the occasion or default to your lowest level of training. Those things that are old sayings that I've heard going back to when early 90s when I first joined the military, those still hold true. But
Mhm.
what people now, with social media, with how information's pushed out so fast, um, what you can't convey in a 15-second video or a 30-second video is how much work it takes to get there. And that's where I've seen on the training side, as soon as guys realize that, oh, let me get under this tactical umbrella where half-second splits are going to be good, right? And then they do a lot of things like the constant shit talking about killed in the streets competitive stuff, right? That comes from guys too that have never and will never be in a gunfight.
Yeah, it's like you can't cherry pick and or pick and choose context to apply to a situation to try and debunk. You know what I mean? Because I think that's what guys do when they try to take cross the wires, so to speak, right between competitive and tactical, and go, oh well, you can't do that because that's going to get you killed. That's not realistic. It's like, well, okay, maybe to a point that is true, but would I do that anyways? Like, or am I going to be smart enough to think through this? Am I going to be, I mean, there's just so many ifs and buts when you get into that kind of thinking. I think it's really like self-destructive because you can almost knock down any reason for any kind of training ever at that point.
Yeah, I think when you look at the two different camps, competitive guys versus tactical, there's only one of those camps that are regularly making always and never statements, and it's the tactical guys. Competitive guys are never saying, "I'll never do this. I always do this," because one, they're more actively engaged in like displaying their skills in a competitive context,
Hmm.
and and then they have to be, if you want to win, you want to be good, you want to be a top level guy, you have to be good at so many things across the board. You have to be a very high level at a bunch of different skills, where the tactical guys don't have to be that, or they can develop kind of a modicum of skill, and then it remains untested for the remainder of their life.
Well, and I think in the tactical space, at least if you're um, like an operating professional, whether that's military or law enforcement, whatever, you also work in a team more than likely. Maybe not always, but whereas in the competitive side, it truly is, it's a metric of your individual performance. I say that as somebody who's never done either of those two things. But from everything I've seen, and there may be competitive team events, but a lot of it is individual competition. So there's
Yeah,
nothing to sit there, like you can't ride the coattails. You can't ride it out and just, oh yeah, well, I mean, I was good enough, and the rest of your team carried you on. And
right.
I think it's
It's this.
completely honest to say that there are law enforcement that do that. They coast and have other people carry them.
I, I think there is. I think even if it's not, even if it's not other people carrying them, as like the patrol officer, but it could be like statistics carrying them. Like, hey, chances are I'm not going to get in a fight. There's more officers that have gone 20 years in a career and never had to shoot anyone than there are
Mhm.
that have had to. So now that obviously varies from what part of the country you work
Sure.
in and
Sure.
departments and what your actual assignment is. But even I think in the most dangerous of assignments, statistically, guys spend more time not having to shoot, armed, dedicated suspects than they do having to do that. So it's a it starts to be it's for the serious guys, the guys that take their job serious, treat it as they are a gun professional. um they're training for they're spending 100% of their training time training for a 1% or less than that of their actual work time.
Well, and yeah, I mean, you can't, I mean, statistics are good for a lot of things, but it should never be a justification, again, I think, of why you don't train. Like, those are the people that'll sit there and go, oh, well, statistically, most gunfights don't go past 6 rounds. So why do I need to carry more than seven? And it's like, well, I mean, there's a lot of reasons. Magazines fail. You could miss. There could be more than one guy. I mean, I mean,
Yeah.
you can't really, I mean, you could try to talk your way out of it, but in my opinion, anyways, the reality is that some of these things just don't make sense. You can look at the numbers all day, but that's the nice thing about numbers is you can make them say whatever you want.
That is, and there's plenty of companies that do that, right? They're going to take data sets from Force Science and build everything around that, and because no one's willing to question it, or it becomes the gospel, right?
Hmm.
Well, this is the data set, and I've had plenty of my friends, one guy specifically who went to one of these companies courses that they're big into the data thing. Well, he just happened to be has a degree in statistics. He's a statistician, works for the government, and started asking them questions about, hey, this seems flawed. The data gets
Oh,
completely kind of,
there it is. Yeah.
the owner of the company walks away from him, and he's a very Instagram worthy guy. And then other guys are really apologetic, end up offering him a seat to another course. He doesn't go back to the second one because right there, like he's a very serious guy that does this for a living as a professional, and hey, tried the course and saw it for what it was. Like, this is like some sort of fantasy camp thing, and it's all marketing, it's all built around kind of crap, that, and also when you see the people teaching it, now okay, you're very enthusiastic, you're very interested in this, but your experience and currency are like out in the basement. There's just nothing there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the big issues where guys that lean so heavily on statistics, and like you could take data sets from Force Science and make them say whatever you want.
Yeah.
And
Well, and that perspective, I think, is what people like. I think people miss when you're looking at maybe it's evaluating, do I want to take this course, or I'm in a course and I'm evaluating what am I getting out of this? You know, you can dress a lot of different things up. I think you can create a lot of situations, but I think what we should be looking at is, are we creating a scenario to fit the training we've designed, or are we creating training to cover scenarios that are actually being encountered, that we're actually likely to come across in the real world? Which, and again, that could be different, right? If you're in law enforcement, you're going to cover a whole lot of stuff that I, as a civilian, would not, right? And somebody in the military, obviously, even you're talking about even different things now. So it's kind of like we were talking before, even with like with the learning process, cart before the horse. It's kind of like building your training backwards to make it more marketable because it's a big business.
oh, it's huge. It's huge business, and that's what I think a lot of guys do. Is it's they, I would always joke about this, right? From the professional veteran mentality. It's like step one, you're going to retire. Step two, you're going to look the part. You got to get the right clothes, the right kit, the right everything. Step three, you're going to start a company, market that company, what you're selling, whatever your shtick is. And then step four, we're going to make some curriculum. And step five is you're going to learn how to shoot. Like
Yeah.
it's completely backwards from where it would be, but it's because it is this industry, it is a business. There are people that, they want to be successful from the business standpoint. And the training industry is one of those things where you can get into it and be very, very successful with very, very low level of skill.
Mm-hmm.
Right. If you can talk and you can create a product that people are interested in, and everyone is willing to look past the fact that what you're teaching, whether it's valuable or not, whether it's good for them or not, they like training with you, so that's the training they go with. And it's a very weird dynamic, and it's not just on the civilian side. There are entire agencies that are not concerned. They're concerned about who they train with rather than what the training is.
Yeah, it almost becomes, I mean, and maybe on the civilian side more, because I've never spent any time on the government side or anything like that. It's been a, lifelong civilian, but it starts to become like a, like, I don't know, like you're collecting Pokemon cards or something like, oh, look, I went and trained with this one. I went and trained with this. And it's like, well, but I mean, that's cool, right? Because there are a lot of good people teaching out there, but that is not indicative of your personal skill. I mean, civilian classes for the most part last, I mean, I don't know. If you get a long class, it's 2, 3 days, right? So you're looking at maybe 30 hours total right there. If that's, long 10-hour days and everything. That's not in the grand scheme enough time, I think, to learn everything that person has to teach you, nor is that a reflection of, well, I went and trained with Matt, and so now I know everything Matt knows. We spent a weekend together. It's great.
Yeah.
Like,
I
no.
think I think for, I would assess, I'm not active in the civilian training world, but I kind of look at what you see out there as it's more of like, it's entertainment rather than actual training. And it is that I want to go train with this guy. The guys that are serious, especially on the competitive side, they're training with a handful of dudes, right? That are national champions, that are winning. But these people are putting in extraordinary amounts of effort, more than any special operations dude, right? They're loading their own ammo. they're dry firing every day. They're shooting live, 1 to 2, sometimes more, maybe 3 times a week. They're committing a lot of time and resources in terms of money, gear to fly to matches, fly to competitions to go do it. They're very invested in this. Where if you look at that then now from kind of the market that I'm go after on the LE side, very few people on the LE side do that. Like single digit percentages across the board. And it's hard when you're trying to change, attack paradigms in training for the sake of, look, this is what I believe is right. This is what I believe is going to make you successful in the ways that you're going to survive engagements. You're going to be able to come home every night. You're going to have skills that give you confidence to where you're not, the stress level can go down. You're going to kind of be inoculated to the performance anxiety that I think some officers have or would see when a real deadly, like lethal, deadly force type encounter happens.
Yeah.
And all of that comes from very, very basic stuff, which it's not flashy. It doesn't market well, but kind of the proof is in the pudding, where it's like, hey, I would put this against anybody. You take somebody else and train them in your system for a year, and I'll just pick some random dude and train him my way for a year. And at the end of the year, let's see who made the biggest headway. And that's
it's tough because I think, especially in the LE space, like I feel for those guys because I know a lot of them would like the opportunity to do more. I know a lot don't care, and that's unfortunate as well. But a lot of guys, it's okay. Well, you're only making X amount a year. You have to, you have to take time off to go to a lot of this training because your department either won't send you, doesn't have the budget, is more concerned with liability, whatever. And on top of that, you got a family. You want to be able to do nice things for them. Vacation would be, great, all that stuff. It's a tough scenario to be in, but at the same time, I mean, I think there's a certain, and with all of us, right? So like open the scope all the way up, anybody, there's a certain amount of honesty, I think, that needs to be brought to the discussion. Like realistically, what are you doing? You're training for something that could get you killed, whether it's a self-defense situation, whether it's law enforcement. So you're just going to work or whatever. Like, let's just be real about it. Call it what it is. Just be honest with yourself. And I think it becomes a whole different discussion.
I think there's people that they don't possess the ability or have the capacity to see that as a realistic thing in the LE side. So for me, I understand all those things, right? The time, the resource, departments don't have a lot of money, everything. Where what I think is the answer is then I'm going to continue to put out as much information for free as I can, right? What I deem like quality information. If people hit me up like, hey, I'd like to see a video on this, I'll make a video on that. Guys that send me messages, send me emails, I will meet your level of enthusiasm. I'll match it and one up you, right? And it turns into a free teletraining thing. Like what I don't think I'll ever find myself doing is shunning people away, which is a lot of different companies. Hey, you need to get into my pay service. You need to join my tactical OnlyFans, and then that's going to give you the answers. Like, hey, if this guy took the time to write you a DM on Instagram that's long enough, and your response is you sign up for my program, I would like to think that guy flips you the fucking finger, gives you the unfollow, and looks somewhere else.
Yeah.
Like that dude spent a lot of time, if it's written well, like, hey, I've got a question, whatever. I get, not an extreme about messages, but I would say I'm at about maybe 120 to 200 a day.
Damn, man.
And some of them are, it takes a lot of time, but that's where I think my focus is I want dudes to get better, and if you write me a long, detailed message, hey, this is what I'm experiencing, I'm going to do my best to answer it the best I can.
Yeah.
Right. And then usually that guy, you give him something to work on. And I've had it to where I don't hear from him 2, 3 months. Then I'll get a video. Hey, this is what I'm working on. Yep. It takes me 5 minutes to do a little video critique. This is what I see. This is what I would work on. Right. And it doesn't take a lot to do that. Or maybe it does take a lot. It doesn't take me a lot to do that. So, but that is the interest in my level of interest in this training environment. It's not, well, let me push you over to my you know, my Patreon account or my Tactic Only fans, and you just hit me up there. And then and I've even heard of guys having bad experiences with that, where they'll ask a question when they're in the pay service of somebody, and they're like, "Well, you need to go back. I've already made a video on that."
That one does. I mean, at some avenues, I get it. Like, hey, I did if it's like, hey, good question. I already did an in-depth on this. Like, check it out. I'll shoot you the link separately or something. Cool. That's one thing. But there are some people, and I've seen it a bunch of times, where they'll just go, we've already covered this. You need to go check it out. And it's like, well, when did you cover it? If it's on Instagram 6 months ago or 2 years ago, that could be 8,000 posts ago. How the hell am I supposed to find this? Like,
Yeah.
help somebody out. Like, did it take that long? If you have the link, share it. If you can give them a summary, go ahead. I mean, I think that for a lot of the things that this community does well, the training space, I still don't think that we're I don't want to use the word nurturing, because that's kind of not the right word. You know what I mean? But like, we still don't, a lot of people are in it for only themselves and not for trying to help people that want to be more effective, that want to be better prepared.
I would say the vast fucking majority of people, of instructors, are in it for themselves. The dudes that, like, anybody that's familiar with me, you see the guys that I associate with, they are not in it for themselves. And if at any point, in my own opinion, if I would assess somebody flipped and they're like, nope, now this is your focus changed to something else, it'd be like, cool, I'm just going to kind of drift away from you and keep working with what I'm doing. The guys that I associate with, I do so for a reason, because when I had questions, when I was training, trying to make gym, and I reached out to these guys, they met me with tons of information. Didn't push me to a fucking website. Like, it was phone calls, everything else. And that's where I think the industry needs to be. Doesn't, obviously, everyone's in it to make money. Cool. Have classes, make money, do what you're going to do. But understand that, like, we're not, I say it all the time, like, we're not fucking teaching people how to work out. This isn't like CrossFit certification. It's, there are guys who are very invested in this, who want to get better, and they are going to rely on the things that you say in the worst possible times of their life. So you better make sure what you're giving them is, the most current thing. It's not some polished shtick that is backed up by nothing, right? And are you doing, as an instructor, are you doing the appropriate amount of work to evolve and continue this evolution of training? Or are you just practicing to teach what you teach because you see the end state? I've heard it plenty of times. I've heard it from a number of guys, like, hey man, I don't want to be on the range in 5 years. It's like, well, then we're completely different, because if I'm lucky enough to still have people that are interested in training with me, I'll 100% be on the range in 5 years, in 10 years.
Yeah.
And that's where I think the kind of the dedication to the evolution of training and actually forging this industry forward, skill forward, individual skill, individual training modality, the way that people train, because that in itself has kind of changed over the last, even 10 years.
Oh yeah. I think we've seen in the last 10 years for sure, but I mean, you could probably even say less. And I mean, the term I always say is like, it's like a dichotomy, right? Because it used to be very, very different between the competitive side and the tactical side of things. And now we have things coming together and kind of we're starting to get that clearer picture of what things should look like. And we're also starting to get people that are with that, like yourself, that can give that information and maybe some perspective, maybe some context with it and go, listen, I've done both. Here's the overlap, and this is truly, what matters. Um, I think where we unfortunately fall short is people go, I don't want to, like, I won't look at content or information from a competitive shooter because I'm not interested in competitive shooting. And you look at it from a very
Yeah.
black and white standpoint. And I think you miss a ton there. I
You
know because I used to be that guy.
you miss everything there. And the only thing I can say are in the tactical shooting world, the best guys in the business only look to competitive shooters for their training. They don't pay one fucking second of attention to a tactical shooter. It's not even, no one gives a shit about that. And that's where like, okay, great, you were a cop for so long or whatever. No one
Mhm.
fucking cares about that level of experience. Now, if you can do something, you've trained yourself to a very high level, that's what's interesting to guys. Oh, you're a competitive M class shooter, a competitive GM shooter that's constantly training and evolving. You can speak about how you train and how you've gotten to this level, right? You've done it all on your own. Like that's unique. The showing up every day for 20 years to some department and on a part-time SWAT team, no one's fucking interested in that.
Yeah, I mean,
And
there's not to say that there's not like no lack of respect for people that do that, obviously, but like
no,
it's not enough to
what
say
I
I did
what
this
I'm
and
yeah, what I'm saying is no one's interested in that at the highest levels.
right, right.
Like we're not the top tier guys, the top tier of law enforcement, the full-time guy, they are not looking to those dudes for any ideas or concepts. And from my experience, the places that I've worked, we only look to competitive shooters for shooting. When we wanted to drive, we looked to race car drivers. When we were
Yeah.
skydiving, we looked to professional skydivers because that is where those are the true subject matter experts. It's not some fucking Muldoon that spent 10 years on an ODA that says I'm a subject matter expert. Like, no, you're not. I hate to tell you, but you're just not. You might be a subject matter expert. You're the big fish in the bucket that you were swimming around in. But in terms of the whole world, no, you're not an expert at shit.
No, and
And
and that's why we have such a problem, I think, especially when people look at social media as their their primary
oh,
resource for, information. I mean,
dude,
there was a post I think last week that I know you commented around it, and I remember seeing it and just thinking it was completely idiotic, but it was this post being shared around in several circles, talking about how marksmanship doesn't matter. And, and there was slightly more to it, but the point was marksmanship's not important because you're going to have to survive in the woods. You have to do all this other stuff. And I think it's this, I mean, like, yeah, again, you could apply that context and go, yeah, in a
dude,
bad situation, right? You
and
could, but
every single one of the great, yeah. So I get it. In terms of surviving, yes, surviving in the woods, patrolling is good. From a keeping, running a patrol, whether it's a recce patrol or a squad size patrol or a platoon patrol, keeping them alive against an adversary comes down to marksmanship.
yeah, yeah.
This is where, like, when people start talking about this, and I will say to everyone, that I've ever come across that makes these statements in the social media world, it's like, hey, really quick, no problem. Let's jump on a live and talk about this. Let's let everybody, you're an expert, right? You have something to say. I have some, let's talk about it. To a fucking man, none of those dudes will talk live about it.
No, I think
Well,
it's like
let
a
me, they won't
marketing
talk
tactic.
live. They won't talk live to me. they'll go into their own echo chamber and talk live amongst themselves. But it's like, hey, well, let's talk about this. You're the one that's saying this doesn't matter. I have a different experience set than you do. So let's talk. And everyone is like, I'm not going to do it. They want to bang it out in the comments, where with at any point you can delete someone's comment on your post, you can just step away from it and be like, oh, whatever. You can some little quip, which some of them are very good, and just it kind of walk away from it like a mic drop, but
Hmm.
nothing really gets solved. And that is where, like, I think, the social media side, yes, it's 100% necessary for business. It's unfortunate that it is. When I first started Extra Alpha, I didn't have a social media, and going after jobs and contracts, I didn't get two big ones and ended up talking to a police chief that was like, well, we just don't know who you are, so we're going with this guy. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like you're
Yeah.
a bona fide agency with a you know full-time regional fucking SWAT team, and you're going after a guy based off of Instagram. And it's
Like
like,
you guys have access to background checks and information normal people can't get, and you're going off of an Instagram page for your decision making. And that
okay.
should tell everybody everything they need to know about government work. Not all of
Oh,
it.
yeah, that was honestly like that created some conversations, and then it was, with other guys that I respect in the industry, like, yeah, you got to do it, and reluctantly started an Instagram page, and you know kind of didn't do anything with Facebook and just stayed on Instagram. And now I will tell you, at a minimum, I want to rage quit Instagram probably 2 times a week.
It's it is kind so I mean, I know people enjoy the content and everything, and I also understand that I'm not, you know, I'm not much at all, right? But I will tell you that I definitely get to the point almost every week where I'm like, man, I have to make a post today to keep up with this stupid algorithm, but man, I hate it. And I've talked to guys, I've had a lot of guys come through the pod. I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but guys who've done great things. I've had guys like Dutch Moyer on. I've had guys like Bob Keller that have been on, and these are guys that have achieved at high levels, done things that the rest of us can't, dream about, right? And what's the constant? Drew Estel from Bear Solutions, right? Every one of these guys, man, I hate social media. Man, I understand I got to do it, but man, I freaking hate social media. It is such a pain in the ass,
Dude,
but it's the world we live in.
I man, I kind of when I got into it, the one thing I kind of committed to myself or promised myself, I was like, I'm going to be the realest version of me that I can be on there. And it's got me into trouble. It's got me, it probably doesn't do me any favors in terms of growing a platform or anything like that, but I just think I get more, for any bit of hate DMs or hate mail that I get from it, I'll get 10 times that much of people who just think it's refreshing. It's finally somebody fucking being honest, right? Because Instagram, dude, I would, the one sentence I think I say plenty, like in classes, like Instagram is ruining shooting one video at a time. There's enough fucking clowns out there that don't know what the fuck they're doing. There's
Yeah.
guys that I've had in my classes that I didn't even know they were whatever 60, 70, 80,000 followers for their company, and then 2 weeks after they take a class, they're regurgitating things that I train on that are now their thing. And it's like, okay, dude, you're crushing you're doing phenomenal things for my business because you're explaining it incorrectly. So keep doing it, dude. Like, that's great. You should have probably taken better fucking notes in the class. But that's the way it works, right? You can get a rebirth and be anyone that you want to be on social media. And consumers of it don't see that. They just see an end state. Well, guys that travel in this community see entire backgrounds and legacy stuff for years and years and years, and it forms opinions
Mm-hmm.
about what you're seeing. And I think it's, now saying all that, I have met some phenomenal people like through social media, guys that are really into training, guys that, are full-time SWAT cops at different agencies that I would have never connected with. So that ease of connection is really good. But honestly, like, it's the amount of nonsense that you have to sift through to find what I would consider is relevant or like worthwhile to pay attention to. It's insane. It's a full-time job.
Well, and unfortunately for people who are new to the space, right? There's like this ever growing level of, I'll use the word vigilance, right? You have to have when you're like vetting some of this information that comes through. That's what's so dangerous with people that, like, obviously, look at everything that happened in 2020, right? The world's on fire, no one trusts anybody, and we all, major cities riots and everything. So people go out and get their CPL and they get a gun, and then the guy at the gun counter says, "Well, make sure you get some training." And you can find all kinds of stuff online. So people start looking around online. You don't know what you don't know. So you're looking at these people. I mean, something I saw years ago that stuck with me is when Pat McNamara did a video on range theatrics, so some of the dumb shit people do, like snatching the gun back after one round or the stop and look and scan. And you just, the dramatically slow reholstering, and people think that's right and necessary.
It is, but also, like, for my optic on Pat, it's it's a dude that's a living caricature of a person talking about range theatrics. Your whole shtick is theatrics. Like,
Well, yeah.
it's like that's the rub where, obviously there's tons of dirty knowledge there, but it's like I'm watching a guy talk about and I get it. The message is good. Yes, stick to the basics, do things that make sense, be able to explain the why you do it. So I agree with everything that Pat says in that. But also, like, you're a character.
Oh, true. Oh, for sure.
It's
And I know that's why some guys, that's why they love him. And I'm like, it's not my thing. Mad respect for the guy. It's just not my bit, and
yeah.
see past that and get the value out of it. But there's people legitimately taking those things and applying them and making them real training, not because of Pat's video. I'm saying there are guys out there teaching the snatch the gun back, and the stop and look and scan and stuff. And it's like, well, is it all? I mean, and I don't know. I've never actually been taught that. I've only been to a handful of classes, but it always seems to be one of those things that people make a very dramatic point out of. And it's like, okay, is it really necessary? What should you be working on? Should you be looking to move instead of just standing there? I mean, there's other things to think about.
So I think where, to go to like Pat's point where, he's been around for a long time and has seen organizational training, right? And I have participated in a ton of organizational training as like an end user. And you have to understand, okay, hey, you're going to shoot a drill, come up, shoot 2 rounds, shoot a failure drill, 2 rounds in the body, 1 round in the head, and then scan and assess. The scan and assess is not like them having you do that at the end of every drill is not that is actually how you scan and assess. It's a way for a bunch of guys on a line with instructors standing behind them that everyone is thinking about an order of battle that has to happen post an engagement. Not that is actually how you would do it, but that, okay, you're doing the movement that we taught you, right? It's going to go left, going to go right, whatever. But you're shoulder to shoulder, 40 guys on a line. Like, that's institutional organizational training. It has to be that way. It was the same reason why I believe like the 5-position draw was taught, right? It's not the most efficient draw in any way, shape, or form. It never was. But guys start with their fake SWAT hands out like they're holding a rifle. They
Yeah.
grab the pistol, that's 1. It comes out of the holster, 2. It rotates to the target, that's 3. 4 mates the grit, and 5 is the press out. It has nothing to do that draw is the best, most efficient draw. It's a good enough draw for anyone to do. the thing is, if we get everyone doing that, one guy can sit and watch 40 shooters and assess that everyone's doing the same thing. So it gives you a system on what to do and how to do it with very clear explanations as to what you're doing at certain times and why you're doing. Now, whether those prove to be, real in terms of a gunfighting context, once guys had more and more experience, that's irrelevant. The fact is that came up as an organizational thing. So one guy could watch 40 dudes draw and be like, yep, everyone's doing what we taught them in the class.
So as somebody who's been, I mean, you spent time in the military where you, I assume, learned a draw stroke there, and then post-military, you're also a grandmaster, right? So would you still say that something like that is the right starting point for people to learn how to draw? Or is it that it's too, I mean, military, law enforcement, government, big companies, it's all the same. Getting any large amount of people to change any process, large or small, is always a huge endeavor.
Yeah.
So is it just that's the way we've always done it and it's too difficult to change it? Or is it legitimately still a good starting point, you think?
No, I don't think it's a good starting point for an individual. And then for organizations, the starting point is not, hey, what draw are we going to teach them? It's how are we going to select and how are we going to train instructors?
Yeah.
That's where you have to go with this, rather than there is not an organization anywhere that selects instructors to be range staff based off their shooting ability. I challenge anyone for that. It's time on the job. It's hey, this is your next position. They never look at like, hey, this guy in this platoon is a very good shooter. We need to pull him off the operational line and stick him into this training cadre. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that at the highest levels. They don't pick instructors for where I used to work, the training course, based off how good they are. It's literally, this is your time. You have to move over there. Now guys get good. They develop, they get better. Guys realize, hey, I'm really good at teaching, or I really enjoy this, and they develop into that. But it's never picked like, this dude he is a phenomenal shooter. Like, we need to put him onto a training cadre. I don't think anyone's doing that.
No, it's your turn in the rotation, so have at it.
Yeah, it's the same way where you see a lot of organizational norms that run into problems where with like picking guys for a SWAT team, right? I don't think for most places it's like it's pretty much picked off of like a PT test and maybe some other tests, but the assessment period is so short where that's all they're able to do. So you kind of, hey, you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. You can't say, oh, well, this guy's not good. Well, you fucking assessed him for 2 days. Of course he's not good. Like,
Yeah, what can you tell in 2 days,
CQB
realistically?
CQB training starts with how you assess people to take part in that training. 100%. Like that kind of dictates it, right? You have to have certain attributes, certain personality traits, certain individual skills that are going to make you more successful, make you more trainable at these higher levels. And you're not going to bring that out based off of how many fucking push-ups you can do. It's never going to be that way.
Yeah, I think that on both sides, law enforcement and civilian and military, I mean, and any of it, I think people kind of miss the mark with that altogether. They look at, like I said earlier, the line on the resume, like, hey, I was in this branch of the military or this unit, or I was this job role, and now I'm going to be a good person for you to learn from. And maybe they will be, right? I guess maybe that's one of the benefits of social media is that you can start looking at some of the things they're doing, maybe, right? And get an idea, hey, is this going to be a good idea for me? But it's also very difficult because, as we were saying earlier, right? Like anybody can dress it up. It, it,
Yeah.
it, can, it can be 100 different things.
I'll tell you, for me, it's somebody's pedigree. It factors zero into whether or not I'm interested in having a shooting discussion with them. It's I'm more concerned about not what guys have done in the past. It's like, what are you doing right now on your shooting journey? Because the I would say the best dudes from a shooting standpoint in the world have had nothing to do with fucking military or law enforcement.
So yeah, I mean, a lot of the competitive shooters, not all of them, but a lot of them, yeah, they've never done
Not
the
even on the
military degree.
competitive side, the best guys, the best groups of guys that are doing stuff like from concealment, from EDC, have never done shit in the mill.
Yeah,
They're
that's
just
true.
so and those are guys that are defensive minded in nature, right? The best guys from that are teaching combatives, right? What Matt Pranker would assess, these are the best hand to hand dudes, and encompassing that into a system, have had no fucking military or law enforcement experience.
Yeah, I think that the civilian space, right? I think it just allows for, and this is not a rule, a hard and fast rule, but I think it just allows for more innovation, more free thinking, and then you can kind of further shape that idea. But I think it gets discounted when people hear, well, you were never in a service oriented role, right? To whatever degree. So
Yeah,
a lot of guys
that's
get, they poo poo on that just because you never wore the
that
uniform.
that is such a cop out, man. It's like the best dudes that when I was wearing a uniform that I was trained by never wore it. Like, and that's where I think guys, maybe social media has a lot to do it. Maybe lack of research, lack of understanding has something to do with it on the individual that's like looking for training. Like service in the military or service in any capacity does not equate to fucking skill. Not even individual skill. I think people would be amazed at how little fucking special operations guys shoot, like across the
Talked to,
board.
yeah, having talked to quite a few, I've actually had people tell me that straight up. Like, we don't spend a lot of time, guys that were, Green Berets and Rangers and stuff, and
Fuck no,
like we
fuck
don't
no, they
spend that
don't.
much time shooting. Like, you have any idea how much other stuff we have to do? Like, you
So
just time management.
that's always the that's always the cop out. Oh, we got to be so good at everything. It's like, well, dude, from my optic, you weren't good at any of it. You were good at working out, getting tattoos, and getting your truck lifted. Like that's what you were good at. In
There's a
terms
lot of
of
that.
guys show up, like white side soft guys show up, and it's like, okay, yeah, you're good dudes or whatever. But now, if you have something that needs to be very technical, and we need to now apply this in an operational context, and all of a sudden you see people scrambling around and fucking shit up left and right, and you're like, wait a minute, what? This is your bread and butter. This is what you guys. This is your charter. This is one of your medals. This is one of your primary medals. Like, why are you not good at it? Well, we've been focusing on this, and it's you almost want to stop and be like, well, then what the fuck are you good at? Explain that
Yeah.
to me. Like, because I see your asses in the fucking gym. Your whole ODA is fucking gigantic. You guys are beasts, right?
Yeah.
So, is that what you're good? Like, unfortunately, that's not what we need to apply to this problem set. Like, we need something else.
And that's funny you bring that up because that's one of the things that I get feedback the most on is like, hey man, you have to be able to lift more, you have to be able to run faster, you don't look skinny enough. I know there's other guys in the space that get it, like Lucas from TRX Arms gets, I can't even imagine all the shit he gets because he's skinny. And now he's on this journey of trying to add on weight and stuff. And it's like, does that have anything to do with how well he shoots? Like, yeah, he's super skinny. I mean, you can work
So,
on it, be honest with the assessment though, and go, does that matter as much as your ability to do other things? Shooting performance wise, I would
dude,
say clearly he's fine.
people love to hate on Lucas, and I believe like that this comes from a position of jealousy. 100%.
Yeah.
He's got pretty much unlimited access to ammo. He's got all the guns anybody could want. He has all the resources to train, you know, and what they see an end state, and it's very easy to like to hate on that, like, oh well, he's dressing up in kit and he never did the job or whatever. Like, okay, that doesn't those two things have nothing to do with each other. Like he has
Exactly.
the ability to have the equipment or whatever, but he created that himself, right? For what he did in his company, how he handled that, what he did in terms of videos and everything else, and he kept, whatever he did, he kept reinvesting, and it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And now they see an end state product, but they don't see what he did to get there, right? And it'd be really interesting, like if you look at some of Lucas's earlier videos, it was still, even though his shooting and how he was training looked different, it was still significantly better than what most of the mill was doing at that time. And
Yeah.
that's where I think the jealousy comes in, right? It's whatever. It can be equipment jealousy. It can be, I'm a vet and he's wearing that. He's doing shit better than I ever did. So that pisses me off. So now I'm going to hate on that. There's a number of things. The one thing I like, not the one thing, but I like Lucas's commitment to advancing training, his own personal training, the information he puts out, how he puts it out. He's got the resources to make very, very good videos, right? And then the conversations that I've had with him, his willingness to talk about almost anything and be receptive, but not be receptive in the point of like fanboy receptive, like just point counterpoint back and forth and
Yeah.
and being like, okay, because I think there are things that competitive guys, um, that some of the dudes that I kind of cohort with in the shooting industry have changed the way that he looks at training. And now you see it's better for everyone. He's got a huge platform. The hating on it, I reposted a video just today of him shooting CQB warm up, and I'll get messages like, dude, I fucking want to hate on him, but that shit was good. And it's like, well, don't, like, I get it. I understand that, but you've got to be honest with where that statements come. I want to fucking hate him. Well, why? Like, then you know what? If you want to hate him, work on yourself, fix yourself, right? And I
Yeah.
do plenty of hating on, like, I would like to think maybe this isn't true, but in my mind, I'm not hating on people, but or attacking people. I try not to. There's a couple that I do because I absolutely hate them as human beings, but I will attack ideas.
Yes, and I
Like,
think that that's an important distinction that people fail to realize. People can't see past. I mean, and honestly, I think it's only getting worse in society. Like it goes beyond shooting, right? People are not good at taking any kind of criticism or negative feedback. If you can see it for what it is, and it's like, hey,
yeah,
Matt's telling you that you're doing this badly with your shooting from the position of, I imagine, trying to help you get better, right? He is not saying, hey, you're a piece of shit. Go die in a ditch because you shoot bad.
dude. So
Like,
there's uh a group of guys that is their argument all the time, where it's like, hey, you put something out on social one if you put anything out on social media and someone has something, a counterpoint to say against it, that's not a personal attack and it's not toxic, right? I don't believe it is. I never will. I'll never subscribe to that. And it's one, I didn't make that fucking post. If you don't want people to comment on it, make your goddamn account private.
right.
Right? But you can't do that because you're promoting a business, right? I'm not attacking your business. I'm just saying this doesn't make sense. You caught me at this time or whatever. None of these fucking dudes I follow. So I'm trying to actively not see your shit, and then it just pops up because we're in the same industry space or whatever. And you make a comment, and more times than not, it all divulges down to, well, we're just trying. It's like the moral high ground argument. We're all really good dudes. It's like, that's not even what I'm talking about. I'm sure you're amazing guys. And I would even say, like, go so far as to anyone in this space, we all share commonalities. Like, we all probably, you know, violently support the Second Amendment, like aggressively support the 2A community. And then that's one argument they come at, like, oh, this is bad for the community. It's like, let's get one thing straight. We're not a fucking community in the training industry. We have
No.
competing efforts across the board. Like, there are polar opposite. We're working towards the same thing with training people, but there are individuals that I share polar opposite viewpoints on a lot of different major issues with regards to training. We can all agree, like, you support the second, like, we all think the NFA should go away. Yes, I agree with that. We could probably sit around and not talk about training and sit in a bar and have beers and get along great. But
Sure.
people can't separate that. They're like, oh, well, it's a personal attack. Dude, like, I tell everybody, let me tell you one thing, dude. You're so fucking soft. If I was personally attacking you, it would look a lot differently than this. It would
Yeah.
be remarkably different than this. And then I also wouldn't personally attack you the way that I would like to on social media.
Yeah, because it's
Like,
there for the world to see. Like, it's not that it doesn't happen, but yeah, there again, there has to be a certain amount of honesty, and like, and I'll be up, straight up with it. Like, I've struggled with that. When people give me feedback, I'm like, all right, is this like, I'll run it past friends sometimes. Like, is this person being a dick, or am I just being too soft? Like, am I applying tone that's not there? That's the problem with electronic communication, is you don't always get the tone from stuff. I think in the shooting space, there are a lot of people that get torqued up and get a lot of heartburn over shit that they really don't need to. Like, it's a difference of opinion. And at the end of the day, that's really what it ends up, or where it ends. No one's saying you have to listen, but like, that doesn't mean the other person is wrong just for having a different point of fucking view. Not in its
no,
essence, at least.
no, I don't. I think there's a lot of different. Now, some things are like,
Well, some of it's
some of the
obviously
most,
dumb shit.
some
Yeah.
of those recent ones, like there was whatever I don't even know what his company's got some weird name, but he has a handlebar mustache and he doesn't like slings. So he makes a video of shooting an AK where he just
I
throws the
saw
AK
that.
on the ground, and it's like, all right, dude, what the fuck is going on? Like, this is not the thing I needed to see on a Monday morning type shit. And whenever that got posted, I got that like 50 times in messages. And it's like, holy shit. Like, okay, maybe that opinion might not be okay to have. It's still your opinion. You can do whatever you want. But
Sure.
also, I can do whatever I want to counter that opinion. If we can't agree on that, then like your position isn't any stronger than mine, right? And from a point counterpoint standpoint, it's the same way. Hey, working out in kit, cool. If you want to post a video of you working out in PT gear, your plate carrier, your helmet, your nods, doing deadlifts, you can do that. That's a good point. But now I can also comment whatever the fuck I want to on that. And
Yes.
if that makes you mad, that's a you fucking problem and not a me problem. Because like I just don't see that as I see it for what it is. So I'm going to say all the things for what I think it is. Now, you can always gauge where, okay, that hit a nerve because probably what I'm saying might be a little bit true.
Probably. I think that's why people have those emotional responses, is it's like that refusal to acknowledge being incorrect about something, or acknowledge that maybe they're just less right than they want to be. I mean, for a long time, people were that way about dry practice, right? Dry fire. Well, dry fire is not going to make you better, bro. Dry fire is not going to get you, where you want to be. You got to hit the range. You got to, dry practices for what I mean, I've seen it hurt a bunch of it. And it's like, I think there's enough people out there that are way better at this than you that would have a different opinion. Not to say just because in mass saying something or a large group of people saying something makes it automatically true. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there's enough evidence from those people and the output, right? The performance that they've had, competitive shooting, things like that. I've not had one single competitive shooter that I've come across or talked to or anything that has said, you shouldn't dry fire. It's not good for you. But there was certainly those guys out there screaming about why it's a dumb idea.
There's the tactical guys, right? And the one thing I'll say, we all know the tactical guy we're talking about, and it'd be like, hey, how's your journey to make GM going? He came out and was like, oh, I'll be GM in a year. Fucking absolutely not. No, you won't. So good luck.
How long did it take you to make it? I don't know when you started competitively shooting, but how long did it take you to make it to the point of Grandmaster?
8 months.
Damn. Okay, so it's possible.
That's a skewed metric because I had been shooting practically for 10 years. I just hadn't been competing.
So, okay, so let me ask then that when someone says, okay, I'm a USPSA, right, Grandmaster, what does one have to do to get to that point? Is it I'm not familiar with it at all, other than I know that it carries that you can perform well.
Yeah, so you can make GM through the classifier system. So it's a group of standard exercises that are shot in matches, typically in a club level match or section match or area match. You will have one classifier, maybe two classifiers in a normal match. So you shoot that. Within the classifier, there's a thing called high hit factor, right? The high hit factor is the highest hit factor that was ever shot on that classifier in a national level match. So, you take El Pres, like in production, and this may have changed, but El Pres's high hit factor was 10.3. So that is the highest hit factor that was ever shot on that classifier in a major match. Okay. So if you shoot, to be a GM, you're shooting within 95% of that. If 10.3 is that hit factor and you shoot, let's say 10.0, that might be 96%. That is a GM level run. Now, if you accumulate enough of those, right, and the scoring system becomes very, very complicated where you shoot 4 matches, your first 4 classifier gives you an initial classification, and then after you've shot 8, they take your 6 highest, most current, and they form an average, right? And that's what would give you, you have an initial classification, and then you'll get your classification. Once you have 8, your initial is still your initial. So if you classify as a GM, you're going to be a GM forever. So that's, GM is 95% to 100 of the high hit factor. On that M class, master class is 85 to 95, and then A class is 75 to 85, and it goes down to B and C and D class, are lower. So it's just a percentage. Now there's another way to make GM would be you can make it if you're shooting a major match and within any division, I believe there's 3 GMs also shooting that division and the field is of a certain size, then your overall match score counts as a classifier score. So if you win the match and you get 100% as a win, 100% of the match points, that counts as 100 to your average. If you get like, so I shot Wisconsin section match when I was unclassified, and I ended up 89% of the guy that won, which I believe was Tamfo Timmy was the guy that won that match. So I was 89% of him. So that counted as a major match score to my classification for carry optics as an 89.
Okay.
And
So,
so it's a complicated system, right? I think the big takeaway would be kind of GM is the highest level, M class would be next, A class. I believe between A class, M class, and GM, in terms of skill level, it's all the same skill level. The difference is what a GM can do on demand every time is going to be significantly different than what an A class guy can do on demand every time.
so in terms of, and that would be in terms of everything. So speed, in terms of marksmanship, like the whole picture.
Yeah, it's a balance of so everything is scored hit factor, which is it's a balance of speed and accuracy. And then the USPSA scoring system is, you would think the higher the hit factor on a stage, if it's a 10, 11, 12, 13, speed is going to be favored more than accuracy. You're still not going to get the scores you want if you're missing or hitting deltas, but it's balancing speed and accuracy. Kind of the mid-level ones where you would look at above 5, 6, 7, 8. Those are a blend of both speed and accuracy are of equal value. You need to be fast and you need to be accurate. Lower hit
Right.
factors, 5 and under, 3, 4s, longer field courses are going to favor accuracy more than speed. It's not saying that the speed element is not considered, but you need to be accurate, right? You could on a 4 hit factor long field course, you can run it 2, 3, 4 seconds faster than somebody, but you shoot 10 Charlies. He's a guy that runs it 3 seconds later and doesn't have those Charlies is going to have better points, and the hit factors are going to work out in his favor.
So hearing all, I mean, that just puts me at an absolute loss for why people would look at competitive shooting and say that it's somehow negligible or doesn't matter. I mean, the
So
standard to which you can repeat those same actions, which, I mean, putting rounds on paper or steel or whatever, reloads, like it's all the same stuff, just in a different context.
it
How that
is.
how is less valuable, that doesn't make sense to me.
Well, yeah. So tactical shooters do that. The tactical guys do that. One, because they look at it a game. Two, because they can't do it. They would Most of those guys that are perpetuating that would be very low level, like D and C class shooters. They would get crushed by little kids at matches. And that's
Damn.
something that their psyche and their egos couldn't handle. It couldn't because I'm this gunfighter or whatever. It's like, well, so first off, you can't be a gunfighter if you've never been in a gunfight. You're just an enthusiast that really likes guns and you like equipment.
That's a fair point.
That's a different thing, right? So stop referring to yourself as a gunfighter or a tactical dude. It's the same way as like, well, because you carry a pistol EDC and you have all of these things, you build your life around EDC, like that's an enthusiast thing. You are enthusiastic about your personal protection, and that's one thing. That doesn't make you a tactical guy, right? If anything, I was just talking to my wife about this today. So you can always say that, like, saw a guy in the grocery store that had like he was outside the waistband carrying like a Uncle Mike's
Oh no.
holster,
God
some
damn it.
gun, nylon holster with his shirt over it. Then he hiked it up, open carry. And I was like, okay, so there's something to be said. Like I could look at that dude and I feel safe in assuming like you have very, very low level of skill, right? So nobody that is really good at shooting or anything goes out and buys an Uncle Mike's or Phobius holster and
Yeah.
carries it outside the waistband. So that is a consistent thing, I would think, from my view. Now you have guys that can have like all of the top shelf. They buy a Tenacore holster, a T1G holster, a T-Rex Arms holster. They've got all the gear. They've got the best gun. they've got everything, and they can still have very low level of skill. The common thing is you're never going to have a very high level skill guy that doesn't have decent equipment.
Yeah, you don't know, because your level of commensurate knowledge has risen to the point where you realize like it doesn't make you a better shooter, but bad gear will make you a worse shooter.
Yeah.
You
Like
know,
maybe a nylon Uncle Mike's holster carrying
yeah,
an appendix is not the best call.
I gotta imagine the safety there is coming into question, as well as I wonder what the draw speed on something like that with because they'll have that stupid strap that you have to unbutton to draw and everything, and they're just some of the some of the shittiest holsters I've ever seen.
It was, I'm telling you, at the grocery store today, it was an amazing experience.
Was he carrying a Springfield XD? Because I usually see those two things being fairly
Dude,
synonymous.
so I did get a picture of it, but I don't know I couldn't tell. I only saw the magazine base plate. I didn't see what it was. The second guy that had it, he had a Beretta, the PX4, I think it was.
Oh, the Storm. I hate that
Yeah.
gun. I fucking hate that gun. I think it's
Well,
ugly and shit, and I don't think that I just don't think it's particularly good.
I've never shot one. I know there's plenty of guys. I know Ernest Langdon loves them, but I also know that Beretta pays them. So I don't I
Yeah,
haven't seen anyone from my experience that goes into a gun store. It's like, oh, Beretta Storm, but I'll take it. Let me get that one.
that's all me. Yeah. I I mean I personally don't like double single action, but I've shot one and it was enough to put me off of it. It was a like a full size SIG. I had a buddy who was a Michigan State trooper. It's a full size SIG. I think it was double action only, actually. Now I'm thinking about it, in 40. And it's just the longest, nastiest trigger pull I've ever experienced on a gun. I was like, no, that's enough. Are you sure you don't want to do a couple more? I'm like, no, give me my Glock back. I don't no, I'm not fucking touching this thing again. Screw that.
Yeah, I've trained with some agencies that have one of the HKs that like that. It's like a double action only gun.
Uh,
And
yeah, I know what you're talking about. I don't their naming conventions kind of confusing.
yeah, but it not something like it's like I don't think I get it. Different agencies, different requirements, but like I don't think you guys are setting yourself up for success. Good news is they don't shoot people a lot, or need guns to that capacity. So I get it. The argument is like get whatever fucking you guys can go back to wheel guns. It doesn't really matter for you. You're
Yeah.
not in gunfights regularly.
Well, and that's just one of those things where it's a personal pet peeve for me because I have a really good friend, great guy, worked in law enforcement. He's the one I borrowed his SIG. He actually now is moving to a federal agency, and I got to spend time over the holidays on the phone, like, oh man, went to the academy. I used a red dot on a pistol for the first time, and telling me how great it is. I'm like, yeah, man, I've had one for like 4 years now, so welcome. We've been doing it for a while, but those same kind of people, will lord over folks that while I was in law enforcement, I went to this agency's academy, and we set the bar for XYZ from a training standpoint, and you wouldn't understand. And I really I hate that attitude and that approach to training because I don't know. In my experience, most of the law enforcement people I've shot with are not actually great shooters. And I think that that's a direct reflection of the environment they've been trained in for the
I
most
think
part.
that I think that's probably fair. I will say like the law enforcement guys that end up finding their way into my classes are usually, I would say, better than most other LE guys. Like I haven't ever had I try to like give descriptions of the class like, hey, this isn't basic. Like it's not basic, it's not advanced, but we're gonna shoot a lot, we're gonna train a lot. Like don't you're gonna come in 2 days, we're gonna shoot 1,000 rounds pistol, 1,000 rounds rifle. And that typically lends itself to guys signing up for the course that are really interested in shooting. And they've at least done, a moderate amount of work to train themselves in terms of dry fire and live fire, or they have decent understandings. They're familiar with Ben's book. They're familiar with dry firing. They understand, kind of the competitive world and performance-based shooting. So that's a little different. Now in conferences I've done, yeah, you get guys that kind of point the gun kind of everywhere, and aren't necessarily really good. I've seen everything from like guys holding pistols with revolver grips. Thumbs are all tangled up. I've seen some teacupping and things like that, like kind of stuff that's, hey, this is going to be a heavy lift for you for 2 days trying to sort this out. So,
well, that's what I don't understand guys like that, regardless of their background, that don't ever want to seek out. They don't want to seek out training. They don't want to seek out help from other people. They go, oh, well, I was in the military, so this is what I need to know. Or I was in the reserves, so I get to train once a month on the government's dime, or I was in law enforcement and I go through whatever mandated training, but they never look to anything else. And I think that's where everybody looks. You buy your first gun. Hey, I got a buddy who's a cop. Maybe I'll ask him because I don't know who else to ask. And that's the kind of incestuous like knowledge and training ideas that get passed down. And those are the same people that turn around and, like you were talking about earlier, oh, marksmanship isn't a primary concern. There's other things you should be more concerned with when you're out here, rolling around doing gangster shit. I don't know what the fuck to call it, but like,
yeah. And there's definitely like there's a civilian component now that is very focused on, revolutionary type activities, like, oh, it's very militia based or whatever. And that also is like cart before the horse. Like, I'm focusing on patrolling and you got to be able to land nav. And it's like, okay, outside of your house and you're going to start moving overland, like if you ask them very basic things like, what's your map situation look like, dude? Like, did you buy all of the, USGS maps for, 20K around your area? Because then you got a fucking 4-foot stack of maps sitting there. Do you even know how to navigate across the map sheet? Right? It's more complicated than but you've gotten enough knowledge from social media in this like prepping type world where, oh, you're going to go up into the hills. Like, I don't think that's a good move, or that is honestly the most realistic way to be. If you're interested in that, by all means train that.
Sure.
But I also don't think you understand, like, in the event of like all out shit hits the fan type war, what that looks like.
No, it's
the dudes that are coming to get you, they got fucking belt-fed machine guns.
Yeah.
That can touch you before they don't even need to get close to you. And that's the world where people live in, like, oh, I'll defend this. It's like, you'll defend that right up to the point where a Humvee with a Dillon arrow rolls up down your street and chews your fucking house in half. Like, that's what that type of war looks like. So stop talking about that. And also, I think if that's your mentality and that's where you want to go, that shit gets done where you don't put anything out on social media.
That's the funny part, isn't it? These guys are talking about all this living off the grid or operating off the grid, and you're going to get killed because you can't do these things, or you don't, spend your time on your weekends hanging out in the woods talking to a log. And there's some value there, but like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know where you live, Matt, but where I live, houses are like 25 feet apart. It's very suburban, and I have to drive almost an hour to get to anywhere that is isolated enough where I could even practically apply a lot of these skills.
Yeah.
I would say there's not value there, but my immediate concern is operating within the area I live in and
But
how I'm going to do the things I
it's
need to do here.
it's also guys that don't understand like a siege on a city. It's like, no, they're not going to come occupy the whole city. They're just going to stop choke points. They're going to isolate the roads, and then you're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
You're, oh, well, I would just, my bug out bag. Like, no, you're going to make it to the first checkpoint and then it's over. Your bug out situation is ended. Like,
I'm glad we don't see too many of those anymore. People's videos and stuff on bug out bags. And it's like, actually, bugging in is probably a better plan. Maybe just buy some more food.
yeah, hunker down and see what happens. Like, I don't know. I, yeah, I would like to think that, for everyone, even like all Americans too, it's the outcome of that or the actual like conduct of something like that happening is so catastrophic for everyone that we never get to that point,
That's
right?
the hope.
I get you never say never, never say always, but there's almost a certain sect of people that seem like they're craving that to happen.
Oh, yeah.
And those are the people like you don't even understand what that level of war looks like. Like I don't want that for my kids. I mean, I have a lot of kids. I've got kids in the military. I work for the government. Like this is not something that anyone wants.
No, and honestly, I see so much of that because it's clickbait, it draws eyes. I see there's so many people out there that like will post stuff, oh, the end is coming, it's on its way. Financial collapse is here and everything's failing and if you're just now getting prepared, you're basically dead already. And it's like shut the fuck up. You don't know your fucking ass from a hole in the ground, oh well we had two or three banks fail. I'm like, well, I can tell you as somebody who works in finance, I could tell you why that happened. I can also tell you why this mass collapse you're telling everybody on YouTube about is probably a lot less realistic than you want them to believe. Same thing with,
Yeah.
let's all take to the streets. Let's all jump to guerrilla warfare. And it's like, I don't think you understand what you're saying. I think you're full of shit.
Yeah.
But you got a platform, so go ahead and say it, I guess.
You can say it, but you're also it's creating a bunch of angst and a bunch of you know, thought processes that probably aren't good. They're not constructive. They're not it's not building people up to actually, be sustainable. Like that, no one wins in that situation. You take
Right.
to the streets in guerrilla warfare, all right, well, you better hope you guessed right, or other than you're fugitives. And to date, like I want to say probably like post 1930, I haven't seen anyone really win against law enforcement.
No, they usually just wait you out, beat you with sheer numbers because they can
Yeah.
escalate. Like your point of escalation is getting your body armor and your rifle. Their point of escalation is getting 20 more people, armored vehicle. I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't, you can't win, or you won't, you probably won't in that particular instance. Not to say the whole armed revolution thing, that's how we were founded as a country. That's, in my mind, a completely separate discussion. I think that when people look at that and they fall to that for everything, it starts to lose value, though.
So now, yeah, the armed revolution thing, like we were founded as a country like that, but we were fighting a separate country that was geographically isolated from us. Right. I don't think within the Civil War that we fought in this country, anyone won.
I would say there's a lot of evidence to support that. I would say you could, yes, a side won technically, but I don't think anybody really walked away from that going, we're way better
No,
off now.
no, it was just a bunch of Americans killing other Americans. And that's where I think people need to get away from this idea that at any point, I get it. Like it's the Constitution exists to raise up against tyranny. But now you're talking about fighting your own government. There's other ways to fight that, right? In terms of how you vote, how you know, are getting messages across. But at any point, you think you're going to take up arms against the government. I mean, even if the
100%.
military became fractured, like as somebody that came from the U.S. Mill, you are not fucking winning that. Whatever. And then also, it's devastating for Americans to even think about shooting other Americans. If that's where your psyche is, like you're fucking wrong already.
I
I
agree with
believe.
that 100%. I say it all the time. You got to play the game to win the game, right? So, and one of the things that kills me, especially in the 2A space for some fucking reasons, we all these people that well, I'm so moral and I'm so just. I will not let immoral men govern me. So I'm not going to vote. Like, well, how the fuck do you think they got there? Because people like you don't vote, and there's enough of you not voting that then these people get voted in by the people that watch CNN. And that's how we ended up here. We just did that we behaved that specific way for long enough that now those are the people that are making the rules. You want it to change, put out correct information on firearms, correct your friends when they say things that are wrong, show up to vote, be an active part in your community. Like there's a lot of fucking things you can do to fight the fight that don't involve picking up a fucking gun. Like let's just be real about it. Is it glamorous? No. Is it going to be a pain in the ass sometimes? More than likely, but that's kind of how it works. And if you can't, and this is just me, and I'll get off my soapbox, but like if you can't acknowledge that and realize that, then you're not as dedicated to fighting that fight as you want everyone to believe you are. Just my opinion.
I think a lot of dudes, it's just like asking guys to train. As soon as you flip it and put it back on them, and you're like, "Hey, you got to do some work," they're like, "Nope, I got nothing." You just want to sit on a table or stand up on a chair and bark. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, let's do some work about this, right? Get committed to it, to some aspect of this where you're actually now working towards an end state. And you what you see is now interest really dips off. Or they're like, well, my work is I just shit talk on this platform or whatever. This is what I'm doing. It's like, well, have you raised money for this? Have you given money to that? Right? Like I know I'll routinely when those FPC things come up and you're looking at like donations, like every chance I'm filling out the form, sending that the to my representative, sending my explanation. Hey, this is why I don't think this is good. This is how I would like you to vote. Like that's how the process works. At no point is it crossing my mind to go get gunned up and go do something. Like
no, hell no.
that's the wrong answer, man. And I get it in terms, but again, just like the training thing, the prepper space is huge. So if you can, and these companies do it, if I can instill a little bit of fear in terms of what it's all morally just, you're going to be prepared. Like I don't care if you want to go buy freeze dried food and bury it all over your yard. Fucking by all means, go do it.
Yeah.
Like I don't.
Yeah.
That's go do that. Like I get having some extra food. Yes, in a national emergency, that's going to make sense. Like being self-sustainable. Yes, that makes a ton of sense. It's why we have a guard. It's why we have chickens. You know, we're interested in it, but we also have that because we have a lot of fucking kids and it's a better way to live, you know? So,
Yeah.
but I think we don't do that based off of fear. We do it because to us, it just makes sense, but we're not promoting like the fucking collapse of society is why we're but if that's your thing then by all means do it. I also think though that the companies that promote that in terms from a fear-based side I necessarily don't think that's right.
I agree 100%. I mean, yeah, it's a marketing thing. Yeah. Yeah. I think you pretty much nailed it there. But I know we're kind of coming up against it, Matt. I want to say thank you again for taking the time and sitting down with me. This has been awesome. Hopefully we can do it again in the future. For anybody listening that doesn't already know, where can folks find you online if they want to check out your information and what you got going on?
Instagram is probably where I'm putting out most of the training content. It's xray.alpha.llc. So at X-Ray Alpha, pretty shadow banned, so you might have to type the whole thing in. I've got that one. I've got a backup that's just X-Ray Alpha LLC. That's probably the easiest thing. I have a website, www.xrayalpha.com, where I'm listing classes. try to get a little bit better about writing content on there, and I post it in sort of a blog format, just thoughts about shooting, things like that. But most of the videos live on IG, and then I've got a guy that migrates them over to YouTube. So
Awesome.
that's where you find me.
Well, cool, man. I appreciate it. And we'll be in touch and enjoy the holiday weekend.
I will. Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. Take care. So great discussion with Matt Pranka there. Didn't know what we were going to really get into. Didn't kind of know what to expect. Matt has a lot of experience, military, competitive or practical shooting or performance, shooting, whatever you guys want to call it. He's got a lot of knowledge and experience, right? And it's great to have people like Matt out in the community as not only as sources of information, as willing teachers and mentors and coaches, but also, as he mentioned, sometimes it's not popular. Sometimes is the person that's willing to stand up and say, "Hey, that's wrong." I think when we're talking about a lot of this stuff, it is absolutely necessary to have people like that, and not just somebody that's willing to say that something is wrong, but that is willing to have the conversation and justify their point of view and have the conversation, things like that. So, I'm sure a lot of you guys already follow Matt on Instagram and on YouTube. He definitely has a lot of great conversations, and highly recommend you guys check out what he's doing, because there's a lot that he shares. There's a lot to be learned from those discussions, even if you don't agree with all of it. I think if there's anything that can be said about any of the guests that come on this podcast, it's that you don't have to agree with everything that they say or do or want to do or have done, right? But you can certainly learn from all of these people, and I think that's one of the parts that I enjoy the most about being able to do this. And I hope you guys are learning as well. Obviously, I hope that's why you guys keep tuning in, keep checking out what we're doing. I mean, the numbers are going up, so clearly I think we're doing some things right, and it's awesome to see. If you guys want to continue to support us, and if you've hung out this long into the recording, we have a Patreon page, patreon.com/prepared_mindset_pod. For as little as $3, you guys can support what we're doing here. It helps make this effort and these things possible. If any of you guys are familiar with streaming services or any professional services, that this stuff costs money, and we don't currently make anything. It's not a profitable endeavor, which isn't really why I do it. But obviously the financial support helps so that we can do more things. We can invest more time and effort and energy into things like that to just to do more, do better. And we appreciate your support. We appreciate you guys hanging out and listening. This is, I think, a point for us where we're looking at making some pretty big steps and some pretty big strides, hopefully going into the rest of 2023, and very excited at a lot of the opportunities, both on the pod and off of the pod, that are headed our way. Hopefully, right? Working on a couple side projects and things that hopefully will manifest themselves, that we're looking forward to being able to share with you all. And, and hopefully that's the way it plays out. I think with what we have planned here, maybe I'll do an episode on that. Maybe I'll do an episode where I talk about the plans that I have for the team here at Prepared Mindset, the growth that we're experiencing here at Prepared Mindset, and what that can hopefully mean for the future and the additional opportunities and information we'll be able to share with you all as we continue down this road of learning and discussion and things like that. So I hope everybody enjoyed this. If you're listening to this at the time of release, it's Memorial Day weekend. I hope everybody has the opportunity to barbecue and spend time with good friends and good people, and remember everything that has led to us having this holiday and celebrating this holiday, whatever that means for you. If you have friends that are adversely impacted, reach out, check on each other. But do absolutely take the opportunity, as I don't believe any of us do enough, right? To hang out and spend time with each other and connect and just be in good spirits. But I sincerely appreciate you guys, hanging out, listening. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Certainly going to have more of the same coming over the next few weeks. You guys know, every week we have a new episode coming out with, usually with some new interview guests or new topics of discussion, things like that. So stay tuned for more of that. But until then, everybody, you guys enjoy your Memorial Day weekend. Get out there, hit the range, hopefully. And like we always say here, work hard, train smarter, and be prepared.